So, as most of you are aware of by now, a couple of days ago, Supreme Court blocks Biden's vaccine or test mandate for employees. Um, Now, this is something that went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and I understand that a lot of people are looking at this as a huge win. And I don't want to be the one to rain on anyone's parade. Uh, but a couple of months ago, I spoke to you all about something called Overton's window. And this is something if you want to learn more about, you should definitely go ahead and do some research on it. But essentially, this is a political theory that refers to the range of policies that the public will accept, and this range goes all the way from something being acceptable, political, all the way to radical and unthinkable. And the key word or the key term in that is something that the public will accept. So the Supreme Court halted the mandates for non healthcare workers, but they proceeded with the mandate for healthcare workers, particularly those who are seeing patients who use Medicaid or Medicare. And I want you to look at it like this. Imagine every day I show up to your house, every single day, and every single day I knock on the door and I demand $1,000. And you tell me no. And I sit there and I continuously demand $1,000. You say no, I ask for it again. You say no, I demand it again. I'm getting loud, and I do this day in and day out, day in and day out, day in, day out. So much so to the point where you finally just call the cops. And so while I'm up there one day and I'm demanding my $1,000 from you, the cops roll up and you tell the cops, "Sir, please escort this gentleman or arrest him, get him off my property. He's constantly demanding $1,000 from me." And I look at the cop and I was like, "Yeah, he needs to give me $1,000. I have things I need to do. I have bills to pay. I got people to take care of, and I'm just belligerent about getting my $1,000." And the cops looks back at the owner. He says, "This guy really wants $1,000. Why does he want $1,000 from you?" You say you don't know. I tell you, I need my $1,000 from you right now. The cop decides, you know what? Don't give him 1,000. Just give him $300, and let's call this a done deal. You oblige. You give me your $300, and I leave. Would you consider that to be a win? No, of course it's not a win. Why? Because the demands were always invalid. The demand that I made for $1,000 was always invalid, and it was something that you should never comply with. And the same thing can apply to this vax mandate. The demands were invalid, and I'll show you as we go on this video why the demands were invalid. Uh, and for those who have complied, I want you to know that for most of you, a lot of you complied because you were bullied and you were threatened. You were simply coerced, meaning that you were persuaded, uh, an unwilling person, persuaded to do something by using force or threats. And so they were threatening your job, threatening the way that you make your money, threatening air travel, threatening going to restaurants, and essentially just threatening your normal way of living life. And so a lot of people complied. Then you have a small amount who did not comply. And I want you all to know, I want you all to remember what happened during this time, especially when I go through these things that you all really need to think about and why I say that this was never a valid request. And Joe Biden knew that. The whole entire administration knew that this was never a valid request. So, what he did is Joe Biden decided to use OSHA, which is Occupational Safety Health Administration. I could have that wrong, but what they deal with is they regulate uh, health health measures specifically on the workplace. OSHA regulates health measures, temporary health measures specific to the workplace. And so this deals with something like face shields, if you're a welder, wearing hard hats, goggles, anything that would be used to protect you while you're at work. But the key word is that It's specific to the workplace and it's temporary. COVID is not specific to the workplace. And if you were to get the vaccine, that's not something that's temporary. See, if you wear a hard hat at work or a face shield or goggles, whatever you're doing, you can actually take that off when you leave the job and go home. However, once you get the vaccine, there's no becoming unvaxxed just because you left. So this is something that was way outside of OSHA's regulatory abilities. And once again, they knew that. But what Joe Biden and his administration pulled off is most likely the greatest pump fake that we've ever seen. Because once again, they knew that they couldn't push this off. He said it back in 2020 that this is not something they could do as far as making it mandatory.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power, just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory nationwide. I'll do everything in my power as the President of the United States to encourage people to do the right thing, and when they do it, demonstrate that it matters.
And so even when people started first hearing about him using OSHA, a lot of people knew that that wasn't going to happen. And so once again, they knew it wasn't going to pass, which makes this one of the greatest pump fakes ever because they understood what would take place. Once they started creating the divide by calling this the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Monthly briefing from my COVID team. And here's the latest data that confirms that we're still in a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
They understood that the overly emotional and neurotic people of society would step in and take over and take this to extreme heights. He also knew, and they also knew, that a lot of businesses would go ahead and impose this mandate unconstitutionally. They would go ahead and impose this mandate. A lot of people would be threatened to lose their jobs. And so, since they kind of bluffed and told people that this is something that's coming and it's coming from the president, you have these videos of him, begging people to get it. A lot of people went ahead and complied with it. However, I don't believe that he ever thought or they ever thought that this is something that would be passed by the Supreme Court. What you need to understand, what we all need to understand, is that whatever benefits you get from the vaccine is a personal benefit. It's not a societal or public benefit. The mandates, the intentions of the mandates were about stopping contagion. However, we know that the vaccines don't stop the spread. We know this to be the fact. In fact, we even have Fauci saying it himself. And so here we have an article from The Hill. Fauci, Omicron will infect just about everybody. Infectious disease expert and White House chief medical advisor, the head keeper elf, Anthony Fauci himself, said Tuesday just about everybody will eventually be infected with the Omicron variant of coronavirus. Omicron, with its extraordinary, unprecedented degree of efficacy of transmissibility, will ultimately find just about everybody, Fauci told XYZ. And I quote, those who have been vaccinated and boosted will get exposed. Some, maybe a lot of them, will get infected, but will very likely, with some expectations, do reasonably well in the sense of not having hospitalization and death, he added. Once again, we're going to get into the numbers. But when you're saying that most people who are vaccinated will do well with it, you have to understand that that is the case for everyone, whether they're vaccinated or not. We know this to be a fact for sure during 2020 because for the most part, no one was vaccinated. And we had millions of people infected with the virus who got over the virus, had natural immunity, while also surviving with no vaccine. And the overwhelming majority of those individuals did not require hospitalizations. They did not require ICU. The majority of them were asymptomatic and or mild. So we know that happened in 2020 with no vaccine or little to no vaccine. And so when people come out and say, uh, those who are vaccinated, like Fauci saying, those who are vaccinated uh, will do well with will do reasonably well as far as hospitalization and death. Bro, that is the case for everyone, regardless of their vaccine status. And we know that because of 2020 when no one had it. And then we can also see the numbers as far as everyone who's been infected with it and those who don't have the vaccine and still doing well. So saying that, you have to watch the hustle in that, because that's a very tricky tactic that they're using. In addition to people saying, who are triply vaccinated had a quote unquote breakthrough case, and then saying to everyone that thank God they had the vaccine, because if they didn't have the vaccine, it could have been worse, or it would have been worse. What are you basing that off on? What are you like? What other parallel universe are you seeing that play out? Because once again, 2020, for the most part, no one had the vaccine. Even in the beginning of 2021, a lot of people did not have the vaccine. They were not vaccinated. And we still saw that survivability rate, which we're going to talk about, extremely high. And so we know for the most part, if you are infected, mild and or asymptomatic, we know that. So to say those two things is disingenuous. It just is, because that has been the norm. Mild to asymptomatic has been the norm. And I hope you all understand why that's such a disingenuous statement, that if you are vaccinated, you won't need, you won't be hospitalized, or you won't have severe illness. That's everybody. Let's continue on. So we know that it does not stop spread, and it does not stop being infected. Therefore, uh, the Biden administration trying to use OSHA to impose this vax mandate to contain contagion, it's not even a real. It's not even a real demand. It's not even a real goal, because this thing is spreading. It's spreading. It does not stop the spread. And people like to say one of the new things to say is that, all right, it may not stop the spread, but it slows the spread. These folks won't quit. They don't stop. You got to give it to them. They don't stop. So now the new thing is that it slows the spread. My question to that is, what proof do you have that it slows the spread? Are you going to use the proof that we just had the most cases ever? We had over 1 million cases in one day. That's the most cases ever. And we have the most people vaccinated. This is the most that we've been vaccinated worldwide. And we have the most cases ever. So, what stats are you using to say that we're slowing the spread? If you're saying that you're slowing the spread, and you mean and by that you mean historic cases, then okay, I guess. But if you look at the NBA, which has a high vaccination rate, 95 to 99%, I believe, in the NFL as far as vaccination rates. What's going on in the NFL and NBA? You have players who are having to go through the COVID protocol. They're having to miss games. You're having coaches and CEOs trying to decrease the amount of isolation. You have them demanding that they no longer test COVID positive patients. I'm sorry, COVID positive players who are asymptomatic. Not only that, if that wasn't enough, you remember Kyrie Irving. I did a video on Kyrie Irving a couple months ago. Shout out Kyrie. Um, he was sidelined. He was forced out of the game because he refused to get vaccinated. And that was the stance. They said, all right, if you don't get vaccinated, you can't play. Well, lo and behold, so many of the players on their team, but also NBA wide, were COVID positive. Brooklyn Nets are have the chance of actually going to the playoffs and winning the whole entire thing. These folks, they showed their true colors. They showed you what it's really about. It's not really about health and safety. It's about winning the trophy, winning the actual championship. And so what they did was they bought on an unvaxxed player, Kyrie Irving, to replace vaccinated players who were infected with the very thing that they were vaccinated against. I can't make this up. I can't make this up. And if that's not enough proof, Um, you can also look at multiple colleges around the United States have gone back to online learning because of COVID outbreaks, even though they have an extremely high uh, vaccination rate. And the list goes on and on and on. And so when you say that at least it slows the spread or it's going to slow the spread, just stop. Just stop. And so if all of that wasn't enough, as far as why everything that's going on with this vax mandate uh, is invalid, and the Supreme Court ruling everything, and why we should not see this as a major win, and why all this is just illegitimate in general. Um, the vaccine is outdated, and not only is it outdated, as far as protection, well, I'll let Pfizer's CEO tell you himself. And so here we have uh, Albert Borla, aka the bad guy from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Are going much higher in terms of severe disease, ICUs, occupation, etc., etc. So, and we know that the two doses of the vaccine offer very limited protection, if any. The 3 doses with a booster, they offer reasonable protection.
All right, so you heard that correctly. He said the 2 doses of the vaccine offer limited protection, if any. Just in case you want to hear that again, let's play it back real quick.
Etc. So, and we know that the 2 doses of the vaccine offer very limited protection, if any. The 3 doses with a booster, they offer reasonable protection against hospitalization and deaths.
But wait, there's more. Go ahead, Albert. What else do you have in store for us?
Against deaths, I think very good. And less protection against infection. Now, we are working on a new version of our vaccine, the 1.1, let me put it that way, that will cover Omicron as well. And of course, we are waiting to have the final results. The vaccine will be ready in March. And the vaccine.
All right, well, there you go. Pfizer CEO just said that they're working on a new vaccine for the Omicron variant, even though the Omicron has been incredibly mild as far as the symptoms go, but they feel the need to continue to make vaccines. I don't know. I'll leave that for you to figure out. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this thing up, because here's the foundation that so many people have been missing: the survival rate. As far as your chances of surviving if infected with this virus, on the low end is 98%, on the high end, 99%. I feel like no one's talking about the fact that there's a high likelihood that if you're infected with this virus, you will survive. So, once again, I use that as the foundation. Next, this virus absolutely does discriminate. We know that we've known since 2020 that the more comorbidities you have, the likely you are to do unwell against this virus. Next, we also know that numbers are likely inflated. However, here's the caveat: on purpose. We know that the numbers are inflated, but they're going to try to wrap this up as if it was an accident, but it's not an accident. It's inflated on purpose because more numbers at that time worked for them as far as creating the urgency and the hysteria needed to force people to get this jab. I need you to remember, do what you do. Get it, don't get it. That's always been my stance. I just want to make sure you all are informed, because for me, informed consent is important. However, if you choose to get it, or if you don't, you need to understand that the vaccine is for you. It is for you, the individual. You getting it is not some type of societal deed or political deed or public deed. It's not that, even though you have people doing their best to make it that way. That is not what it is. Once again, It doesn't stop contagion. It doesn't stop the spread and transmission. It doesn't work like that. And this is why I say that this thing, I don't know exactly what all of this is about, but I know that it's not about health. I know it's not about health. Why? Because they can't be so intelligent as far as, creating the vaccine and warp speed and groundbreaking therapeutics. You can't be that intelligent and sharp on one side while being completely nonsensical on the other side. Once again, 98 to 99% survival rate. When I see the response, it doesn't match the data. You would think that the survival rate was 70%, but it's not. We're talking about a 1 to 2% chance of actually, unfortunately, dying from this virus, from this infection. With their response, you would think that we're looking at a 30% chance of being hospitalized and dying. But that's not the numbers. That's not what the data is showing us. Next, once again, this thing discriminates. And you should know this. Everyone should know this. This virus discriminates based on age and comorbidities, along with several other things. But the big things that we know is that age and comorbidities, people who are truly at risk of doing unwell if infected with this virus, should know that, and they should know why, and they should know what to do about it. Therefore, if you're just telling a 65-year-old patient with type 2 diabetes and a 12.5 A1C to take the jab, and that's all you're saying, that's not enough. That's not nearly enough. Like, there's so much more that patient needs to be doing. What are you doing to pull yourself out of these categories as pertains to comorbidities? There's nothing you can do about your age, and you shouldn't try to fight that. Don't try to fight that. However, what you should push back against and fight against is the comorbidities, the obesity, the high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance as a whole, the foods that you're eating, the things that you're drinking, your lack of vitamin D, your lack of water, your lack of exercise. These are the things that you need to be going all in on. And that is what these folks should be telling you versus just telling you to jab, 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 jab. That's all they're saying. That's all they're saying, while giving you little to no real health advice. You need to know your risk, and you need to pull yourself up out of that category as much as possible as pertains to those comorbidities. Next, like I said, the numbers are likely inflated, but that's on purpose because they wanted more numbers. They cooked the books on purpose because they wanted more numbers in order to get people to the point of making irrational, emotional decisions, and also to cause this clash that we're having right now with all these false dichotomies and narratives, vax versus unvax, mask versus mask, social, all these little wars. They needed all of those things. They needed the fuel because it causes more chaos and it causes more division. In addition to all of that, this thing is all invalid because the vaccine is outdated. When you ask one of these people who are promoting these vaccines why there's so many breakthrough cases, they're quick to tell you that the vaccine is not effective against this variant, not as effective as it was before. Which, once again, why are you trying to mandate an outdated vaccine? Why does that make sense? Why are you trying to mandate a vaccine that you yourself is saying is no longer effective against Omicron? What, you think it's going to be effective against the next variant and the next variant? This is like demanding that all new vehicles now come equipped with a cassette player or a track. The vaccine is outdated. And so to try to mandate people get this outdated vaccine doesn't make sense. And then here's a couple of additional things, the cherry on top. They're still not talking about natural immunity. Fauci has yet to really put any real thought or conversation or input about natural immunity whatsoever. I mean, I know they say he's an infectious disease doctor. I know they said that, but um, he hasn't said anything about natural immunity, which is the default. Natural immunity is the default. It's one of the things you learn in the 101 classes. This is not advanced. It's not complicated. Well, it is complicated, but it's not something you need to go to 102 or 103. Like you learn that in 101. And the fact that he's been completely silent on it screams volumes. Um, Something else I want to add to this is that how are we still calling this a vaccine? I won't get into it too much because I've been going on long enough with this, and I'll make a separate video about it. But I really want you to think about what a vaccine used to be, what it used to mean. Um, you know, one again in the beginning, they kept on saying you take vaccines all the time. What's the problem? We always get vaccines. We got the measles, mumps, and rubella, and the polio, and this and that, and this and this. Um, so those were traditional vaccines. I explained this before. We're talking about attenuated vaccines. We're talking about sterilizing vaccines. We're talking about vaccines that actually have a weakened form of the virus or a dead virus in the actual inoculation that is going to go into the body and mount an immune response, which is going to, uh, in return, create natural immunity so that if that virus does appear, your body knows what to do with it, but also it knows how to sterilize it as well. And with those traditional vaccines, those are not something you have to get year after year after year. Let alone quarter after quarter after quarter. Like you're not getting the measles, rubella, mumps vaccine every 3 months, every 6 months, and every year. It's not happening. However, with this particular virus, this particular vaccine, you have people going on their fourth vaccine. I mean, they're already boosted, and once this new Pfizer vaccine comes out, they'll be the first one in line. So we're talking about 3 shots in 1 calendar year. I don't know how we're still calling this. I'll let y'all figure that out. And so I get it. You know, we're glad that the Supreme Court came down with the ruling of, blocking the mandates for non-healthcare workers, which healthcare workers, this should apply for the healthcare workers as well. But I want to also remind us that the mandates in general were never legit. They were never legit. You're trying to mandate vaccines, outdated vaccine. You're trying to mandate something that doesn't stop the spread, doesn't stop infection. You're trying to mandate something where the survival rate is so high. You're trying to mandate something when you have Fauci saying that everyone essentially is going to get it. There's just so much in this idea of a mandate that was just always invalid. So that's all I have for right now. Let me know what you all think about it. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions, and I'm gonna holler at you all later. All right, peace.